Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first Global Voices of the year. I need some applause here. I'm excited about the school year. All right. I'm glad to see a good crowd. Before we get started with the introduction, I just want to draw your attention to the handouts you have. One of them is the Global Center brochure, and this gives you an overview of the big events that we have for this year. This one is for this event here. Today is the kickoff to Global Voices. It is this, yes, it's the same general program as what we've had for Prayer for the Nations. It will just have more variation this year. We have other CCMPs where people will be sharing, and that's always been great. We will keep that. But then we'll have other things that are very unique. For example, Dean Charlie Sands, former Dean Charlie Sands of the Pharmacy School, will be sharing with us this year about his past year, which was spent in North Korea. I said North. I did. And so I'm really looking forward to that, really looking forward to the other things. You're always welcome. One other minor detail is we are planning on, unless we just get overwhelmed this semester, we're planning on lunches for all of our Global Voices. Okay, so most of them will be in Global Center. I would love, love, love to have you with us. And for those of you on other parts of campus, you are also most welcome to all of our events, and I'm very happy to see people from other parts of campus as well. I have the privilege today of introducing my pastor, Danny Wood. He and his wife were first involved in the business world for 8.5 years before they felt called to ministry. He got his MDiv somewhere in Fort Worth, Texas, but his D-Min was right here at Beeson Divinity School. I left. Now, what was the year you started as pastor at Shades Mountain?
97.
97. So I was just graduating from Beeson then. Not too long after that, I left Birmingham to go to somewhere in Louisville for a PhD after receiving my MDiv at Beeson Divinity School. And I went there for a missions degree. Then my wife and I, this is my wife, say hello. Our kids are in kindergarten now. You'll see her a little bit more this year. So we went for a degree there, and then we went to the mission field. So we spent the first 3 years with 6 months in Indonesia, and then Malaysia for 2.5 years. Then we came back to the States for 6 months of stateside. And so while we were here, as you would expect, we are expected to go and share at conferences and take part in missions conferences. And there is one right here at Shades Mountain Baptist Church. I was already going to be in Birmingham. I'm from here. And so I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. Of course, I want to go to the conference. Now, you have to understand, if you're a Southern Baptist missionary going to missions conferences, you never really know what to expect. Might be good. It might be something where you're going to connect with the handful of people in the church who actually care about missions. They may be wearing their native dress from their mission trip they took 20 years ago. Or maybe they were a missionary 50 years ago. And the excitement is less than what you would hope. So I'm going into the conference and I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm going to have a good attitude. I'm going to see if I can influence any of these people for missions. Wake a few people up here. Maybe I'll open some eyes. All right, Wednesday night. Wednesday night is the opening ceremony. I don't know how it's to describe it for the missions conference. And you get there. No, it's not just a couple other missionaries. There's a whole section filled of missionaries. The church is really well attended. The atmosphere is electric. This guy walks up on stage, and I'm thinking, surely he has a background as a DJ somewhere. He's introducing people, David and Jen Parks. And so next thing I know, we're running down the aisle. People are cheering. There's signs with our names on them. I mean, we're treated like rock stars here. And pretty quickly I realized, okay, there's something else going on at this church I want to learn from. So I began to get glimpses of the focus of the church. And I find out that they're sending, at that point, it was nearly 1,000 people, members a year on short-term trips. Now it's over that. I found out there's nearly 60-plus missionaries that have gone out from the church in recent years. They have a vision to plant 2 churches in all 11 of the International Mission Board regions. They have a vision of sending missionaries to all 24 time zones on the planet. And after this conference, I had to get together with Jeremy Grime because he's the missions pastor. I knew him from my days at Beeson, and I said, what happened? Or how did this happen? And he quickly took all the credit and said, if it weren't for that Danny guy, no, he pointed directly to Pastor Danny Wood, and he said, it starts with the leadership and vision of the pastor. And so at that moment, my vision of what a local pastor could do changed immensely. So now as I teach missions, I have this story in mind all the time. And I just shared it with my students yesterday. I have had my mind changed about what it means. So when someone is here at Beeson and you say, I feel called to the local pastor, that's not a consolation for me in terms of missions, because I know if you can get a vision for this, then God can do incredible things through your local church for the Great Commission around the world. So it is my privilege to introduce Danny Wood. I'm not saying these things because he's my pastor. As a matter of fact, he's my pastor because I already knew these things. Please welcome Danny Wood.
All right. Thank you, David. Thank you, man. Well, how are y'all doing today? Yeah, thank you. I invited you for lunch. I appreciate you coming and being a part of our meeting. I appreciate the opportunity that David. Let me ask a question. Do I need to leave this right here?
No.
You know? Oh, good. It's okay.
Rob,
all right.
Does he leave that? Okay.
All right. The reason is I'm just going to turn this just like this. My challenge today will be for those of you that are. Yes.
You actually do need to leave it.
Oh, I do need to leave that. How about that? Does that work? Now we're in good shape. All right. How about do this? Is that bad? That's not good. Okay. But this is good. Okay. Just trying to make sure I know where I'm supposed to be over here. A part of what David wanted me to share is what has happened at our church. And for you as someone going into ministry, how important it is for you to really have a vision for reaching the world. Acts 1:8 is either true or it's not true. And the last words that Jesus gave to his disciples was, you're to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. And so as a church, and if you're involved in church ministry, then part of our responsibility is to lead our church members into making this become a reality. So how do you make Acts 1:8 become reality? And so David wanted me to just share our story, and I will. There's a lot that's going to be covered, but you're really smart students. You're at Beeson, so I think you'll be able to take this in pretty quick. I came to be the pastor at Shays Mountain Baptist Church in 1997. The church is 86 years old at that time. It's a mega church, well over about 5,000 members, averaging a couple thousand in attendance. And it's sitting right up the hill over here on top of Shades Mountain, and it's been there for a long time. If you know anything about Vestavia, the area is pretty well already built up. So it's not like we're going to get a whole lot of new construction, new families coming in. The neighborhood is great, the area, we love it, but there's just not a lot of demographic growth. And so when I came in, there was some stagnation that had happened. And too often in churches, and you'll discover this as you step out from here and go to pastor in a church, too often there's a demographic determination as to what will happen to a church. And there are a lot of great churches that are at this peak, but as demographics change or kind of level out, then you'll see a church begin to do the same thing. And they'll go from, hey, we ran 2,000, and now the next year we're running about 1,800. A couple years from now, we're running about 1,500. On down the road, running about 1,200, and now we're running about 1,000, and now we're running about 800. And we got huge facilities, and we're just sort of slowly but surely dying off. And when I came to Shades Mountain, I had been a member of that church when I was a layperson. And I knew the history, I knew the pastor, you know him, Dr. Charles Carter, and I knew the strength of that church. And I said, God, I just don't think that you bring all of this history and all of these people together just so that it will just slowly sink into the sunset. So I began to pray about what it is that God wanted to do. And God led me to the Sermon on the Mount. And as I looked at the Sermon on the Mount, and looked at the very first part of the Sermon on the Mount, there was a part of the passage that jumped out at me. And so what I'm going to do is share a part of that passage, and it's from the Message, which I hope you don't get upset. I know we're the bastion of higher learning over there, but be careful, you might learn something on this. Is that in the Message on there, just the way it reads is this. Here's another way to put it. When he's talking to his disciples. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. And God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers. So this term, I just love this term. You're a light bearer. As a believer, that's what your responsibility is. You don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Our church sits on top of what? If you're from here, you call it a mountain. If you're from Colorado, you call it a hill. All right, so we're on a hilltop, a mountain, whatever, and I saw that, and I said, this is exactly what we're supposed to do. You've put us on here to shine. You didn't put us on here to say, let's see if we can turn that light down and get you dimmer, dimmer, dimmer. So we began to pray and say, God, what is it that you want to do with us? A couple of our members of our church says there's a global focus conference happening in Brandon, Florida that you really need to go to. And there's an organization called Global Focus. These two men said, if you go to this, it'll change your life. I've had that told me many times, and it's never happened, okay? And so I said, okay, I don't really want to. They kept pressing me. I said, I'll go. I went. My life was changed. I went, I sat down, I listened to some people talk about how you can, as a church, put together an Acts 1:8 strategy that can really impact the world and impact the people there at your church. After I went through that, I took our church through 40 days of prayer and fasting. And so specifically, that's what I did. For 40 days, just prayed and fasted and said, God, what is it that you want for us to do? What is the vision that you have for our church? And the verse of Scripture that jumped out of me in my studies was in 2 Corinthians 10, 15 through 16, NIV, not the Message. And this is what it says. Nor do we claim credit for the work someone else has done. Instead, we hope that your faith will grow and that our work among you will be greatly enlarged. Then we will be able to go and preach the good news in other places that are far beyond you, where no one else is working. Then there will be no question about being in someone else's territory. Whoa, that just jumped off the page. My job is not to steal sheep from other churches. My job is not to come in and have a bigger, better program so people from other churches will want to come and be a part of ours. No, our job is to go far beyond where no one else is working. And that was it. And that God just slapped me in the face with that. And I said, okay, God, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this verse, we're going to take Acts 1:8, and we're going to pray you give me a vision for it. And God did. And what God gave us was what we call the 2010 vision. And this is the 2010 vision that he gave. Let me set up where our church was. Every year, our church would average about 8 mission trips, and about 250 people would go on those trips total. Okay? All right, repeat after me. 8 mission trips. 250 people. 250 people. Is it in your head? Okay, this is going to come back a little bit later. And when it does, you're going to go, wow, that's incredible. Okay? And I will tell you when to say that, so it'll make me feel good. All right. So this is it. 2010 vision. Can y'all see this okay? All right, we bright enough over here? 2010 vision. Our vision was that we would have missionaries serving around the world in all 24 time zones. At this particular time, we had 2 missionary families, a total of 8 people on the field. So we had 86 years, we have 2 missionary families that are on the field. I stood before our church and said, by the year 2010, and I shared this in 2002, is that in the next 8-9 years, we will have missionaries all around the world. After I share this with you, one of our church members, who's one of my closest friends, said, I just got to tell you, Pastor, when you finish with that, I looked at the guy next to me and says, he's crazy. All right? And that's the kind of vision you need to have. Because it wasn't my vision, it's God's vision. So this is it. So what happened? After 2010, this is what we did. We ended up covering 17 time zones. We had 44 units and 143 people that had left our church and was serving, and we covered 17 time zones around the world. Now, the other thing is we took short-term mission trips. So in short-term mission trips, we covered 4 other time zones, so we ended up covering 21 time zones around the world out of 24. And see, some of you will sit out there and say, well, you failed because you didn't get all 24. I didn't know a lot about geography, but what I finally figured out is when I looked up, 3 time zones are in the Pacific Ocean. Okay? Now, I am a goal-driven guy, and I'm as serious as can be. I took a map out, and I took them, and I saw there was a little bitty island, like about right over here. And I called in Jeremy Grime, and I kidded with him. I said, Jeremy, he's our missions guy. Could I parachute you down there? And I promise in 3 weeks, we'll come pick you back up. You evangelize the island, and we'll get that time zone on there. And so we had all kinds of people. We were going to send senior adults on a cruise with tracks and cover time zone. But we didn't, okay? We were straightforward. And so we covered the inhabited world of either going on a trip or had somebody from Shades Mountain that felt called to go to that time zone. Our next goal was that we were going to plant churches in all 11 Southern Baptist Convention International Mission Board regions. What Southern Baptist Convention does, they take the whole world except for North America and they break it into 11 regions. And so we said, well, let's just plant a church in every region. So just quickly, I'm going to show you how we did that. These are the 11 regions. We planted a church there in Peru. We planted a church in Russia. We planted a church in Zambia. We planted a church in Chiang Rai, Thailand. We went to Cuba and was a part of the church planting mission they had there and used multiple locations. Then we went to, it's really Iraq and Iran. We planted a church there. Ethiopia, we planted a church there. In China, had an opportunity to plant churches there. Senegal had one of our members called to go to Africa, to Senegal area, so we planted a church there. We also have a member in India. They planted a church there. And last of all, the European, San Sebastian, Spain, we planted a church there. So we covered all of those areas. So we planted churches all around the world. Also, our 2010 mission was to perform mission work in all 50 states. All 50 states. Now, our goal was to go over those next 8-9 years and do mission work in all 50 states. Mission work is not, I got in my car and I was driving to the beach, and as soon as I crossed the Florida line, I stopped at a gas station, left a track, filled up with gas, and left. Let's check off Florida. That's not it at all. In order to cover a state, we had to put resources, time, and money into it. We had to take a specific trip, go out there, spend some time, pour our lives, and make it happen. I had an amazing video for you that somehow has not made it over here. And I watched it just 20 minutes ago, and it looked really good. But what it would happen is we were going to fill this up, okay, with little blue states on there to show you how we did it. And we did it to where the very last state that we completed was Utah. Had our last mission project that took place there. So now you're telling me that I hit with this? There we go. Great. So we covered all 50 states. So by the year 2010, we'd done ministry in all 50 states. Adopt a strategic focus city. At that time, New York City was an emphasis in the convention. We said that's the biggest city in America. Let's take that city. Since we have adopted New York City, we've been a part of 4 church plants that we have helped plant in New York City. The other thing was plant at least 5 churches in the United States. We didn't do 5, we did 7. And I put these up here just so you can see where they're from. We've got a couple here. It was an Hispanic church in Hoover. We got one here in Birmingham. You're up in New Jersey on the Rutgers campus, then North Las Vegas, Nevada. Hillsboro, Oregon, Nolensville, Tennessee, and then also San Francisco, California. So we're all over the map on that. And let me just tell you something just kind of cool. I got plenty of time. Hillsboro, Oregon. Okay. We meet these guys. Jeremy checks them out. He said, let's work with them. Let's plant a church with these guys. So Hillsboro is just right there in Portland. And so we planted this church. We committed like 3 to 5 years to work with them and provide funds for them. Since that time, their pastor has moved on, but he handed off the baton to another guy. So we don't really know what's been happening with them. Are any of y'all familiar with J.H. Ranch? It's a great place for parents to take their kids and go up there and do these things. We had a family go to J.H. Ranch first day there. Their son got on a BMX bike and tried to hit this ramp, and he didn't hit it right, and he got really injured bad. And they had to airlift him, take him to Portland, and they took him to a hospital. They were there. They didn't know anybody. They didn't know how long they were going to be there. The Sunday school teacher contacted me and says, do you know of any churches in Portland that could minister to them? I said, well, let me check these guys. So I checked them out. I found out who their pastor was and who the administrative assistant was. I sent an email to the pastor and to the worship leader and said, hey, is there any way y'all could touch base with them? Out of God's providence, the pastor was out of town and his secretary called me. And she says, I can do that, okay? So I said, thank goodness we got you. And we got the administrator. She says, I will turn it over to our elders. We said, okay. I get a note the next day. 2 men went right over to the hospital, got him some Nike stuff because all he had on was like his bathing suit from when he had the accident. They went and they provided clothes for the family so that they could be able to fly back to Birmingham, minister to them, help them with their meals, took care of them, and just prayed with them and met an amazing need for that family. Now, what are the odds of that? That way back in the early 2000s, we helped plant a church, and now that church is ministering to 2 of our family members there in Portland, Oregon. It's just neat how that happened. So we wanted to plant 5 churches. What we did, we ended up planting 7. The next thing was plant at least 1 church in Canada. Canada at that time had a vision, a 2020 vision. Plant 1,000 churches in Canada. We said we'll be a part of it. So we said we'll help you. We planted 1 in Lethbridge, Alberta. Every church plant doesn't make it. Y'all realize that, don't you? Church plants sometimes come, they fizzle out. And I was with some people about 3 or 4 months ago from Canada. And I said, hey, we helped plant a church in Lethbridge, Alberta. I know the pastor left. He went back to Tennessee. How's the church doing? And the guy told me, he said, I know exactly what church you're talking about. He says, you know, they disbanded. And just as he saw my face droop, he says, hey, but don't get sad. He says, there was a man in that church, under that ministry of the church, God got a hold of his life to go plant churches, and he's going all over Canada planting churches. And so we got grandchildren all over Canada because of what happened right here. Pretty cool on that. So we planted the church in Canada, and so that was our 2010 vision. All the time zones, all the states, North American Mission, International Mission Board, plant those churches there, plant churches here, Canada. We covered all of that. And so in order to do that, you got to take a lot of trips. Because if you're going to cover all 50 states and you're going to go internationally and help plant churches, you got to send people out left and right. Now, we averaged, how many mission trips did we average a year? You remember? 8. I got some good folks. And about how many people were on those mission trips? 250. From 2002 to 2010, these are the number of trips we took. We took 202 trips to North America, 131 international. That's a total of 333. If you divide that by 9, you will come up with an average of 37 mission trips a year. We went from 8 trips a year to 37 a year. Now, is that good? Is that an amen? Amen. Amen. All right, would you like that to happen in your church? Yeah, for $29.99, I'll send you the video of this talk, and you too can do that with your church. All right, but what happened is our people got on mission. Okay? They got fired up. And because this many projects were taking place, that is why you see 43 units that feel that they got called by God to go and work full-time on mission. Because they started on a short-term mission trip, they came back, and they said, God's got a hold of my heart. I think you want something else for me. And that's what happened. Now, what about the people? Well, we added them up. We had about 6,400 North America. Local community, 3,000. We did a couple serve the city things. We worked over in Tarrant. We've done some things in Vestavia. You take international. We have 11,332 people on mission trip. If you divide that out, it's about 1,200 to 1,300 a year. So we went from 250 people on mission trips to where now we go about 1,200 to 1,300 every year are going out on mission trips. Is that a good deal? Good deal. So you got all these people going on there. It has been amazing. Now, as they did that, we went through 2010. It completely changed our church. And when people would come and say, tell me about Shades Mountain Baptist Church really quick, what would you describe us? We would say, if you cut us, we bleed missions. That's a part of our DNA. That is who we are. And we believe Acts 1:8. It's our responsibility. And we're going to give money to it, and we're going to go to it. And our people have jumped on it. So as we get into the year 2010 and we're getting close to the end of it, if you were a church member, what would your question be? What's next? What's next after that incredible vision? And my response was, I really don't know. I thought the rapture would happen by now. And, I thought this was the vision of all visions, God, and that you'd pull us up and I'd be done with this. But we had to pray as a church and say, what is the next big thing for us to do? And so what we came up with, the vision is Touch the World 2015. Now, Touch the World 2015 is a little bit different. There are two statements that jumped out at me that I read, and it says, because of who he is, we go where he calls us to go. And we wanted to really put our emphasis on God and say, God, because of who you are, we will go wherever it is you call us to go. And so, Lord, we want to go wherever that is. And then the second statement is, if we keep our eyes on the greatness of God, our correct vision of God will direct us and motivate us to carry out the works of God. So as a church, we wanted to keep our vision on him. And as we kept our vision on him, we believed that he would motivate us and show us where to go. It's kind of like the Henry Blackaby. You see where God's working, and that's where you go. So we began to pray about it, and we narrowed it down that what we wanted to do this year was to have evangelism along with compassionate justice and tie these two together. And so in trying to tie these two together, we realized that 2010 was a shotgun approach. We were all over the world, literally. So after 8 years working with people, we began to determine which are the partners that we feel we could work with the best. So we narrowed down our partners, and this is what we came up with. We came up with 20 partners on 5 continents. That's kind of a narrow down. And with those, we began to do things such as helping with church planning, pastor training, business development, leadership development. Like under business development, we've got men in our church that will go to all different places around the world and help people begin to set up kingdom businesses. So you go into, whether it be Indonesia, Thailand, some of those places, we find people who want to start businesses so that all the funds can go towards the church. It's a kingdom business. And so we teach them how to do that and how to develop those businesses. We do leadership development. I've had a privilege of the last 3 or 4 years to go to Jordan and to meet with Arabic pastors who have come from Israel, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and Lebanon, and to be with them for a week and do leadership training and also scriptural teachings on there. We've got a groundbreaking translation project that's happening in Nepal where if I told you about it, you would fall over and say it's the most amazing thing we had. But I'm not going to do it right now, okay? So it's just incredible that we have this opportunity to be a part of something like this. And so this is all a part of Touch the World 2015. So that's the evangelism. But we also got compassionate justice in there. And as we were working with these people in 2010, we began to see these needs, whether it be feeding programs, homeless ministries, job skill training, clean water projects in India, AIDS ministry. We got AIDS ministry in South Africa, AIDS ministry in San Francisco, and AIDS ministry in Birmingham. Human trafficking, and then also prison ministry, reentry, and restoration. All of these things came out of the relationships that we made with people. And as we saw these needs, our church, it's great. You get a church, people have got passions for certain of these areas. They just jumped in there and gotten all involved in it. And so we are getting our hands dirty into the difficult areas of life and showing the life of Christ with them. And it has been just an amazing time for our people and to be able to click in to the lives of others. So compassionate justice. So Touch the World 2015. So this is what we're in the midst of. And we go all the way till the end of 2015. And naturally the question is what? What's next? Yeah. If you could pray for the rapture again, that would really be good. But we're excited. I'm getting ready to tell you about what's going to lead us to what is our next thing. But hopefully you're beginning to see what is happening. And what is happening with our church is we are more outward focused. Now, it's just a word to you that are thinking about being pastors. The thing that will just drive you to death, I remember hearing someone say, it's not being swallowed by whales, it's being nibbled to death by minnows. That's what will just eat at you as a pastor. Everybody yang-yang and complaining about this little thing and that little thing in the church. It will just drive you crazy. And you'll go home and say, I'm glad I got that over with, tomorrow will be different. No, it won't be. It's just now they can reach you easier, okay? And so it's just that yin yang, all this little stuff that's going on. You know what's great in our church? I'm not saying we don't have it. We don't have very much at all. And the reason is we're so outward focused, we don't have time to worry about who's sitting in my pew or how the air conditioner is, or I didn't have the right materials in my little Sunday school class. You see, they've seen the world. And, you know, the great thing is that when somebody gives you a complaint and they've been on a mission trip, you just put their arm on it and say, hey, remember those guys in Zambia? Kind of their situation? Think about it for just a moment with me. Okay, now you got that thought in your head. So now what's your complaint? And it's like, man, I've got no complaint. They see what it's like to pour their lives into others. And it has completely revolutionized our church. And there's an excitement there about, God, what is it that you want us to do? Well, what we did is throughout all of this, there's a statement that stayed with us, and that is the light that shines the farthest shines the brightest at home. Which, as pastors, you can't just say, hey, we're going to go reach the world and not take care of home base. So we had some facility issues that we had to work on. So we had done 2 different capital fund campaigns to renovate and add facilities there at Shades Mountain. And as we were coming to the close of a year or so ago, I looked at everything that we'd done. I looked at our huge master plan, and we had covered everything except for just some small little things. It was about $3.5 million of things that we had to do. Now, our budget's $7.5 million, so we have $7.5 million budget, just to kind of put it in perspective. So we came up with a program called Chapters, and Chapters turn the page. And when Chapters turn the page, this is what we just came up with. After all the building projects we have done, we're really fortunate that we didn't have a whole lot of debt. It's about $2.5 million debt. If you have a $7.5 million budget, that's really, really good, okay? And plus the interest rate we were being charged is about like less than 1%, so that was really good. Then your facility improvements is $3.5 million. That's $6 million. So we could do a $6 million campaign, 3 years, make a pledge, go for it. But ever since we started the 2010 vision, our goal is that 20 cents of every dollar that comes in goes outside the walls of our church. And we have been consistent with that. Last year, 25.7% of every dollar that came in, went outside the walls of our church. So if we're going to do this, I said that we also need to have 20% of it to go to mission advancement. So rather than having a $6 million program, we had a $7.5 million program. And if you would hand me a check, which I'll be more than glad to take today. If you hand me a check for $100, with that $100, we would take 33 cents out of it and we put it to debt retirement. We take 47 cents of $100, excuse me. We take $33, put it to debt retirement. We take $47, put it to our facility improvement, and we take $20 and put it to mission advancement. And as you give, as mission advancement funds increase, then we would take that and we would fund some of these mission projects. And you say, well, what kind of projects do you do? This is maybe the most fun I've ever had as a pastor. You remember Touch the World 2015? We have partners. We're working with people. And as we work with people, we get to know them, we get to know their heart, and we know that in every situation, they have a dream project. We do not have the funds to do this, but if we could do it, it could take our project up to another level. So what we did, I just began to pray. And I said, God, point me to the people that you want us to be a part of this. And we had that Global Impact Celebration like David talked about. As these guys would come in town, I would set an appointment with them. And I would sit down and they'd come in. Have you ever seen that movie, Secret Millionaire? Not movie, but TV show, Secret Millionaire? Has anybody ever seen it? Y'all got to watch TV. Come on. It's not, you don't have to study that much. But it's a story about, it's guys that own companies or something. They're millionaires. And yet they want to give back to the community. So they go into a community undercover, and it's like, hey, I'm just coming here to see if we can maybe do some work in this community, whatever. And they have no idea these people have a lot of resources. And so he goes through the whole show, and he's meeting people. And as he meets people, he begins to see what their needs are. And when at the end of the show, he then reveals who he is. And he would come up, and he'd come up to like you and say, I know you've got that daycare center, and y'all really need a roof, and you need some other stuff. And I tell you what, I got to tell you, I'm not who I said I was. I'm Danny Wood, and I'm a gazillionaire. And so what I'd like to do is I have a check here for $50,000 for you to do all that stuff. And these people, I mean, they're weeping, they're just blown away, okay? I got to be that guy. Because people would sit down and they would say, so what is your need? Dream with me. Tell me what it is. And they said, well, I'll tell you what it is. It says this and this and this. I said, really? I said, ooh, that is good. That'd really help your ministry. So, so about how much do you think that would cost? And he said, well, we think it's going to be about this figure. I look and I go, okay, I think we can handle that. He said, what? I said, I think we can handle that. I said, how about Shades Mountain Baptist Church covering that whole thing for you? How would you like that? I had people weeping. I had people rejoicing. They said, are you kidding me? I said, yes, but it was so fun. Was I'd hug them, I'd rejoice. I'd say, but this is not finalized, okay? We have to pledge $7.5 million first, but I feel confident we can. And if we do, you're in the project. So we discovered about 10 different people. Just to give you an idea over here. Urban Purpose. It's a downtown ministry for the homeless. These two guys, Jim McFarland and Mark Jenkins. Jim McFarland had a construction business. He went downtown and he began to see the plight of the homeless. God got a hold of his heart. So then he said, I'm going to go kind of take some of my time and go downtown. He kept coming to me every few months telling me what God was doing. And then he came back and says, tell you what God's told me to do. Get rid of my business and just go 100%. And he said, we've got a ministry to where we won't just feed them, but we're trying to get them back into society. Mark Jenkins was on our staff. He was our junior high minister. And he always had a burden for the inner city. He got wrapped up with McFarland. They came together. They're working at Urban Purpose. It's an amazing. Our young people go down there every week. We have adults going down there. People are getting connected to working in the inner city. Well, these are two guys. The woman homeless population is increasing. And they say, if we ever have to talk to a woman, number one, sometimes we can't really communicate. Number two, we both have to be in there because you got to cover ourselves. We really need a female staff member. I remember sitting at lunch talking to him. I said, is that your great need? He says, yes. I said, what do you think that costs? He said, well, that's about $30,000 a year or so. I said, okay, we'll do that. And Jim was one of the ones that cried. And Chad knows him and these guys, he'll cry. He'll tear up on some stuff. He's a big guy. And he says, are you kidding me? I said, no, we're going to do that. For 3 years, we're going to take care of it. Now, see, a lot of you say we're theologians, but we are mathematicians. And we know that 30,000 times 3 is not 100,000. See, some of you, I wasn't going to deal with this. I just wanted to see you just go crazy for a while because you're going to raise your hand and say, your whole thing's messed up, Danny. You know why? Because we're giving him 30,000 the first year, 33,000 the next year, and 37,000 the next. You add 30, 33, 37. What do you come up with? 100,000. Thank you so much. That's my number, man. All right, you get 100. So, but we didn't want to do all that add. Just know, for 3 years, we committed to give them $100,000. And so what happens is we've got 30,000 that's got to come to them. So as we began to build up these funds, and we turn around and give them some money. How about this thing? The Azores. Anybody know where the Azores is? Do you even know where that is? Atlantic. Good. Now, the rest of you have really got to study your geography, okay? It's on the Atlantic right off of Portugal and Spain, the Azores. We have a military base there. This guy right here, Art Nielsen, was in the military, retired from the military, and was pastoring sort of the church there on the base. Then they were getting ready to shut that down. So he had a real burden. He started another church for just the Azoreans, and he had a burden for a camp. And so he wanted to have a children's camp. There's nothing like that on the island. And he wanted to reach the children. Now, let me tell you what's so neat about this story. You remember the 2010 vision when I showed you all the way over here and showing you all these different open oceans? Well, if you went to the Atlantic, there is a time zone that covers, I think, like part of maybe Iceland all the way down. And Jeremy was looking on the map to say, how do we cover this time zone? And he found the Azores. And he found the Azores. He went online and he found this guy, Art Nielsen. And so he contacts him. And he says, can we get together? Jeremy goes out there, meets this man. He's just a great guy, military guy, just incredible. And we invite him to our Global Impact Celebration. Sort of like he had the same experience like David did. He comes to the Global Impact Celebration, he and his wife. They're there from Wednesday till Sunday, and on Sunday afternoon, we have a kind of a debrief time. And all the missionaries can share, what's this week meant to you, whatever. Just kind of share with it. Art stands up, and he says, I got to be honest with you. I looked at my wife, and we had said, we're done. This project is not going to happen. We are exhausted, we're frustrated, we're giving up. But we will go to this conference because we were invited to go to it. And he stood up after he said that, and he said, but you have stirred the fires, the coals in my life again, and we are going back to make this become a reality. Man, did that excite our people. They got connected with the Sunday school class. We've sent teams over there to do construction work, and we have committed $120,000, and it will complete that. Now, this is a guy who he and his sons are doing like the whole thing. They're out there working, and it's blood, sweat, and tears. Unbelievable. And this camp is already opened up, and this past summer, they had their first camp. They had 6 kids come to pray to receive Christ as Savior, which over there is amazing. Already we're seeing some fruits. And this thing will probably be completed in about another year. They're a part of Touch the World. This is what our people are excited about. So as people are giving, we're completing our facilities, getting rid of our debt, and we're just meeting needs left and right. So here's your bottom line. The Chapters campaign will go till the end of 2016. So at the end of 2016, since we started the 2010 vision and began to put emphasis on missions, we have invested $22 million in our facilities, $26 million in our facility. That's a lot of money. But let me tell you what I'm proudest of. And we have given $32 million to missions. So in the midst of this, if anybody ever tells you, well, you got to choose. You either got to do your buildings or you got to do missions. That's wrong. You can do both. And if you give your people a heart for the world, and then let them know that the light that shines the farthest shines the brightest at home. We got to take care of what we got on the home base, but we'll never do it by not looking out there. To know that our people, since 2002, will have given $32 million to missions, and then what we have done with our facilities is we've got all of those done. Now, bottom line again, our facility master plan will be complete. Our older buildings have all been renovated. We will be debt-free. So this is our challenge. When we turn the page to 2017, we will have a blank sheet of paper. We have no facility issues. We have no debt payments. We just are wide open saying, God, whatever God-sized plans do you have for Shades? What are the God-sized plans you have for us? No impediments, no excuses. When you become a pastor of a church and you share a vision with people, there will be 2 groups that will raise their hands. The first one will say, well, before we spend all that money, we got to take care of the facilities we got here. You know, they're kind of run down. We need to get something for the youth, got to do something for the children, got to do this and that. Makes sense. You'll share your vision. Someone raise their hand. Pastor, we got a lot of debt. We don't want to be in debt. We need to get rid of that debt first. And so your vision has to sit on the shelf. We have no impediments and no excuses. So we're thrilled to see what it is. And now our prayer is, don't come back. We don't want the rapture, okay? Can you hold it off for just a little bit more? Because we are in such a good position to be able to do something that's just so God-sized that we have no excuses. And that's where we are. And so that's our story. And I'm sharing that with you, not if you say, wow, what a great church or incredible pastor. I'm just sharing that if you allow God to get a hold of your heart for the world, because that is his heart. And if you do that and begin to move your church in that direction, you can do some amazing things. And this is what we're seeing happen in our church, and there's just a thrill about what's going to happen. Bottom line, you can look at it like this. What happened because of that vision? Money given. We've just given so much to missions. It's we're at least 25% every year of every total dollar given. Every dollar comes to our church. At least a quarter of it goes outside the walls of our church. Next is people going. You saw that. We have about 1,300 people that will go on mission every year. Lives changing. Whenever you send people out on mission, their lives are going to change. One of my favorites is Chris Horton. Chris Horton, businessman in our church, median adult, came by when we first began to start this, sharing the vision of 2010. And he says, Pastor, I give money to missions, but I have no idea how else can I get involved in it. He says, what I do for a living is I do training. I do security training. And I go into facilities and talk to them about all their, all their security. Just make sure everything's fine. I do safety training to make sure they're safe. He says, that's what I do. How in the world can I be used? I said, well, I don't know. Let's pray about it, and I'm sure God will come up with something. That Global Impact Celebration, like what David went to, we assign people to Sunday school classes, missionaries to Sunday school class. There was a man who is from what's called E3 Ministries, came to Chris's Sunday school class. And then when he got to speak, he says, someone says, so what are your needs? He says, I need to find somebody that can do training. We need somebody that can do training. Chris Horton's looking around saying, that's me. Chris got with him afterwards and says, I do training. I do training for a living. And this guy says, well, I'll tell you what we need. We're getting ready to take a trip to Peru. As we go to Peru, we've got some leadership training with these pastors, and we need someone that can do it. He says, I'm your man. And he says, and we're going to be doing evangelism. Chris said, no, hold it. I don't do door-to-door. I just do me. I don't do door-to-door evangelism, but I will do the training. He says, okay, all right. No door-to-door for you, but fine. But we'll let you do training. He says, okay. So they land, and as they land the airplane in Peru to get off the plane, the people there greet them, give them a big hug, and say, hey, good news you're here. Bad news is, guess what? The training sessions got canceled. So the guy looked at Chris. I guess you're going door to door. Chris says, okay. So Chris goes door to door. And they go with them locals. They knock on the door. First people they get, they open the door. They walk through a plan of salvation. And the woman says, yes, I'd like to do that. The woman prays to receive Christ. Her daughter's in there, and her daughter prays to receive Christ. They say, can we come back tomorrow and give you some discipleship material? She says, yes, we can. So they go back. They come back the next day. Her husband is there. And so when they give the discipleship materials to her, they talk to the husband. He prays to receive Christ. Chris Horton comes back in town, knocks on my door, and says, hey, Danny, I'm into door-to-door evangelism. He said, I love this stuff. And so guess what Chris did? Chris says, I'll go on more E3 trips. Then Chris says, I'll give half my time to E3. Then Chris comes by and says, I'm going full-time with E3. And what Chris Horton is doing now is he's helping plant churches in Vietnam, Bangladesh, Tanzania. He's all around the world working with E3, talking to pastors, helping to plant churches, and doing leadership training. That's what I'm talking about, lives changing because you gave people an opportunity to go on a short-term mission trip. And the very last thing is vision expanding. It'll expand the vision for you and expand the vision for those that are in your church. Young couple, Mike and Carrie Lasby. Mike Lazenby, just a great guy, got a good analytical mind to him. He and another guy began to get a burden for kids in the Bessemer area. And they go over to this area and they find out that at the community center, they have been given a grant to get a computer system, but nobody knows how to get it to work. And these guys, they do. So they began to show them how it would work. And once they did that, everybody said, this is great. Anything else you'd like to do? He said, we'd love to tutor young guys. We'd love to take these young teenagers and tutor them. He says, great, do that. Well, when they began to tutor them, they began to tell them about who Jesus was. And as they began to share their faith, these kids knew nothing about Jesus. This is Bessemer. This is like 10 minutes from where we are. And they didn't know anything about who Jesus was. And so Mike and David Caston are sharing about that. And on a service in our church, which is a good-sized congregation where people are intimidated to walk down and make decisions, when we give the invitation in a predominantly Anglo church, 3 African-American teenagers come walking down and they say, we've asked Jesus Christ into our life and we want to make that public right now. Well, that was a thrill for that to happen in the summer, but in September, we did something called Victory Sunday where we talk about all our trips. And we did a video of Mike telling that story, Mike Lazenby, and he told the story about these 3 guys and about what happened. And what was so cool is that whenever you show a video, you bring the lights down so everything's kind of dark. And as soon as the video was over, the lights came up, and there's Mike Lazenby in the baptistry. And he's got the opportunity to baptize these 3 guys who he led to Christ. And in their mind, that's the only pastor they've ever known, because he's the only guys ever told them about Jesus. And they walked in, and when they went under the water and came up, we do immersion baptism for some of you who don't understand that. When they went under the water, just as Jesus did. And when they did that and they came back up, and as soon as he came back up, their faces were just electric. They were fired up, and our people just began to cheer for them. We didn't do the little golf clap baptism. Oh, so happy for you. This was raucous. And then the next one, and then the next one did that. It was incredible. And why was it? It's because we talked about missions, and they said, you know what? I got a heart for the people right around here. That's Mike Lazenby. God got a hold of his heart, got a hold of his wife's heart, Carrie. Guess what they are now? They're in Austria with the International Mission Board, with their kids, and they're doing college ministry working there in Austria. God got a hold of their heart, and it changed their life. Expanded the vision for what we do at church. If you came to our church and you had a child that was in 6th grade, and if you stayed in our church from the time your child was in 6th grade until the time they graduated from high school, they would have an opportunity to go on 13 mission trips that we have scheduled. 4 of those would be international. Now just tell me, what impact do you think that would have on your child? What do you think it would be when your child's 18 years old, getting ready to maybe go off to college? What kind of worldview would they have, having gone on 4 international mission trips and 9 North American mission trips, having 13 mission trips underneath their belt? We're seeing kids from our church, some are saying, I don't want to go to college, I'm just going to go right into some kind of ministry. Some are saying, I'm going to college, this is the degree I want, and when I get out, I want to go into this type of ministry and use it for that. It's just been amazing. Now I'm going to close with this, with one of my favorite, Kelsey Weeks. Kelsey Weeks is a, make sure I get all her things. Kelsey Weeks went with her parents on a mission trip at age 9, and they went to Peru. She then took mission trips with our church in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. In 9th grade, she went to a medical missions trip to Ethiopia with her parents, and she fell in love with Africa. And so in her 10th grade, summer of her 10th grade year, she spent 6 weeks in Zambia. Her 11th grade, she spent 5 weeks in Zambia. And then in her senior year, when she graduated from high school, the family came and sat down and they said, she doesn't want to go to college right now. She wants to do sort of a gap year, and she wants to go to Zambia for 6 months. And so they released her, and she went to Zambia for 6 months. And she prayed about what it is that God wanted her to do, and this is what God gave her. She started an NGO named Luyando, non-governmental organization, and it's called Luyando, and it's in a village in southern Zambia. And it's a ministry to break the cycle of poverty by educating the youth of Zambia, meeting their physical needs with food, and pointing them to Christ through afternoon kids clubs. She's 18, 19 years old. This is what she's come up with. And she's built a board of directors, and she's got ministry happening in Zambia, and she's getting support here in the United States. She's got a community outreach job that's helping create jobs for the adults that are in that area. Now she's probably like 21 years old, 21, 22, and she's got this whole thing going. Is that amazing? And see, when I think about that, 2 things. Number one, I said, at that age, I wasn't even close to any of that. And the second thing is, I am so glad she was a part of a church that had that missions emphasis. They got a hold of her heart, and she's doing an amazing work right there in Zambia. So that's what I want to let you guys know. You don't have to go on the mission field to have an impact for missions. If God's called you that, praise God, do that. But if you're here in the States or wherever it is, and God's called you to be a pastor or a staff member, I pray you get a heart for the world. And when you get a heart for the world, you communicate that with your people. Pray that God would give you a vision so that you can take that vision, push it down to the people, let them see it, get a hold of it. And then when that begins to happen, then you are in a huge multiplication ministry. And that's really how Acts 1:8 is going to come alive.